Alright, we're just going to jump right into this. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We're going to quickly cover my Canny Valley rebuild. I basically added the HC for Life famous 2x1 to most of the builds, and I'm highlighting the Homebase, this one first because it's the main one that is very useful. This Homebase build right here is basically with one or two 2x1s right here in this general area with the block off necessary will stop the enemies, and you'll make it to round 30. I've away from keyboard this base constantly in the last few weeks, and I've worked on a rebuild ever since I got extra structures by removing the 3 boxes that I did a video on. Alright, moving on. Some of the block off that you're going to absolutely need, and not the traps underneath the block off there are just there for assassin husks, like to track the player. So wherever you are, they'll head straight for you, and they'll usually pound on the block off. You'll also need to stop the enemies from going. You'll have to put a flat panel right here, even with the wall, that is even with the drop off where those traps were underneath it, and that will prevent any smashers or anything from wanting to even try to go through there, and the assassinists for the most part. Alright, see, that was really quick, wasn't it? Alright, we're going to quickly cover the west side, because it's not the best side, but it's one of the sides that I minimized the traps. I wasn't focused on spawn killing them on this side, but the block off you're going to need to make them go over to that other tunnel is really simple. You'll basically just need a wall with I used increased healing on some of these walls that prevents the smasher from wanting to track that way. They'll track toward the easiest point, and the opposite side has healing on it to prevent the assassin us from completely destroying it. Because my away from keyboard spot is usually right at the death point, because I'm super lazy and I haven't built a away from keyboard material grinder on this build as of yet. Alright, see, that was pretty simple. Alright, for the next amplifier that we're going to be quickly covering, because I really didn't want to waste too much time in this overlay of me describing, but I do have extra traps on this one. That's because this is a heavily hit with propane. There's a propane problem that may or may not happen. Basically, the propane will detonate and destroy most of these traps down here if it's not destroyed in time, and or that's basically what happens. And there's a problem up there. It won't even let me place a trap there, but I will briefly cover it from the spawn point. This is kind of how I got it set up, and it works for me. There's several different ways to build it. Like the reason why I rebuilt this is also because I wanted to put tire traps to not necessarily kill the enemies, but to slow them down to the point where it wasn't just completely eating up the traps. And you'll also need the block off there to keep the slingers from slinging, so you will need a slinger wall. Also block off this ramp over here, just completely block it off like crazy with flatness, cones, and just a standard block off. I also have healing and increased wall health on that tunnel back there. And one of the highlights of this tunnel that I want to mainly cover is the timing on these 3 traps here will stop the enemies for at least a minute if they're a higher level enemy. Roughly a minute. It's not necessarily always a minute, because basically there's only a certain amount of enemies that'll fit inside of a trap box before their hitboxes start spilling over, and that's why I say roughly a minute. But for the most part, they are usually killed on an endurance. So yeah, just a 6 by that. 2 impact with a 4.3 and a 6 point, yeah. Sorry if I'm going a little quick. But yeah, that's the timings on those traps there. Oh. And I'm covering, like I have a tutorial on this. I'm just pretty much trying to cover the changes. For like instance, most amps are covered in I would call it a box of comfort, as in, you never know, don't risk it, just cover up your amplifier with a full metal jacket, and then you should be good. And now we'll cover the west side on this amplifier. My previous build was spawn killing them. I decided to change it up, and like I said, I was trying to stall them, and for the most part this does work as a stall build on this amplifier. And I'm using 144 tire drops, so it kills them anyway on an endurance. And there's a spawn point like right here, so it's more than likely this entire area is just going to get destroyed by the spawn. So when you add a block off down here, what you want on the walls and stuff are increased healing, and then the opposite side, health healing. So if an assassin husk decides to poke at it, or propane, which you'll need sound walls there to prevent some of the propane from detonating. Like I said, this is a heavily deadly propane wave amplifier hit, so I was trying to prevent that, and it works. It works for me, and I've been making it to wave 30. I mean, a couple times I'm not sure what happens, but it's not always guaranteed when you're away from keyboarding that you're always going to make it to 30, but there was a couple chances and variables that will prevent any endurance from making it to its full potential. Also, one of the highlights I also want to highlight on this is, if you keep your landmarks and you don't build over the landmarks, you will always have those landmarks. And like that trough back there, you don't want to. I didn't want to build over it because it's almost like a building landmarks. Once you remove them, they never come back unless it glitches out unless your endurance glitches out on you. And then you'll just lose the structures that are attached to it any fort way. Alright, now we're going to be covering this amplifier over here this one is a heavily hit by Smasher's amplifier, basically. And my build here makes it where the Smashers will not come up through the tunnel here, because you'll have to work with it. If the Smashers start coming through here, you just add block off, like I said, healing, increased healing, and increased wall on some of those walls will prevent a Smasher from even wanting to try to run through those tunnels down there. And I determined I didn't need a whole bunch more block off after that point. And I also did the same thing over here on this ramp. You'll have to block it off, add increased healing on the walls, and healing just in case the Smasher does run through there. And on the ceiling here, you'll want to add ceiling zappers just in case the smashers come through there, you'll want to crit the heck out of those smashers, and it'll possibly kill the first few handful of them if you're not keeping an eye on it. Which, for the most part, I'm away from keyboard and I'm not eyeing it, and it works out. I've checked it at the end of several Wave 30 completions, and that tunnel over there was still intact, even from the propane detonations. Alright, moving on, like I said, this is just a simple recycler. Pushes them down into that side over there that I'll cover briefly in a little bit. Right now we're going to cover this little things on this tunnel here. Basically, I have a wall pusher here, and the wall pusher I'm using there has the increase building health on it. And the opposite side, inside of this thing, has a healing that will heal any damage that may occur during a propane wave, which it's almost like smashers and propane will hit through this tunnel here, and that's why you may want to put a sound wall here that will knock the propanes out of the propane's hands. And the ceiling here, the level of it is important. You have to keep it away from the walls because there's spawn points on the top of on the top over here that will make it where they want to walk. So you'll have to leave a gap on your ceiling electrics and or ceiling drop tires on this amplifier. And yeah, and pretty much I have them tunneled. They'll come through here, they'll get zapped with the electrics, and they usually end up dying before they get here. And most of the time the smashers don't even spawn on the top part over there. And that's that side. And now I'm going to show you the slinger wall. Sorry. The slinger wall over here, which is very important because this side over here gets massively hit with slingers. And beehive destructos is what I'm going to call them. Slingers, basically. So you'll want to put a wall either here. I have mine lowered down there because I was messing around and building a slinger wall skull above this instead of using a completely angled wall. And they spawn over here, and you can spawn kill them if you like. I was going for the stalling them, and I also installed a famous HC for life 2x2 right there next to the skull slinger wall. And I will briefly, you can just look at it. If you would like, I could do a tutorial on the skull. It's a really simple build. You could probably just look at it and throw it together in your BR match and get a BR victory royale inside of a epic skull build like that with the quickness. Alright, moving on. Basically, most of the enemies drop down here or drop down there on the gap that I briefly highlighted. And the slingers, I covered the slinger walls. The smasher will want to go through there if you don't block that tunnel off. And this is also about the height you need, the slinger wall. And I determined through trial and error that the smashers just love to try to go through there no matter what I was doing. So I did the standard increased healing on this wall that detours on for the most part, and then I put a healing spike here that will slow the smasher down when they fall inside this tunnel. Basically, this is like a backup. I put extra traps underneath the block off here that will nuke down a handful of the enemies and or assassin husks that try to come through there after the smasher breaks it. And like I said, the spawn point here is just weird. Sometimes the smashers go up the tunnel, sometimes they want to go through that way. But most of the time they come up this way. And I have extra structures, so and Canny Valley is really good for extra structures. So if you feel the need to add extra damage to any of the builds and or spawn kill anywhere, you could go ahead and do so, like most do. But yeah, this tunnel is just the standard affliction damage, and then they'll fall down here, get zapped, and the timing on these traps right here, it's basically the HC for life 2x1 here on this tunnel. And the timings, like I said, this is like almost a really good timing for your wall pushers is 4.3 and 5 point that whatever I just and they'll go zippy zappy flappy floopy, and then I push them down in that tunnel, and most of the time until the durability goes down, they get trapped in that little recycle center right here. Yeah, but it seems like most of the time it's just yeah, like you may want to put a gas trap 2x2 one right here too if you would like. This would help out on affliction damage for any of the husky husks that come through there on a later wave. And this usually only happens if I don't start as a constructor. If I start as a constructor, the traps last pretty well. But if I just come in here as a ninja and then run it, they more than likely get through. All right, let's see what else do we need to cover. We need to cover. Oh yeah, down here in this pit area, we need to I'll briefly cover that and some of the modifications. Also, if you're solo in your endurance, know that you can have 6 defenders if you really want to just go all out and defenderize it completely. And I have several amps that have defender pads already predetermined. Yeah. Alright, moving on. This is the spawn point for this side, and one of the features and highlights on this one is leave the natural structure wood pieces down here and then place traps on top of them, and they will not get destroyed by the spawn point. They will get destroyed by propane and stuff, but they will not get destroyed by the spawn points if you replace those with, yeah. Moving on. You will also need to make sure that there is a 3 drop gap that will prevent the enemies from wanting to climb down on top of your spawn killing wall there, and a gap here. Because if it's a 2, if there's 2 spaces between a fall, the husky husks and husks will jump down on top of it. If it's a 3 gap, they will not want to jump down a 3 gap. They will definitely jump down a 2 gap. So you'll have to space it accordingly. And I kind of just got a little crazy with the wall darts here on this spawn. It's not like 100% necessary. Like I have extra structures. I'm sure later on I'll just go ahead and add extra structures on that side. Alright, now I'll cover this tunnel over here. It's a propane problematic propane, so you'll have to have the sound walls there on that side, and a couple sound walls there and there. And to keep husky husks from jumping through anything after the propane goes off, you'll want to add some traps on your block off on the tunnels up there. And yeah, like I said, I used heavily gas traps for the affliction damage and stalling them and recycling them to the point that they get pushed down to that tunnel there. And I went completely crazy with the block off here because they, they just seem to always want to walk through there. I may need to change one of the tiles, or there's something like basically, as you see, let's say you're a husky husk, they're not gonna they're gonna bump into this and destroy any of those floor things here because they can't get up top, they can't climb it. So most of the propane and stuff gets detonated right down there. Sets off a chain of events that make it where they want to completely avoid that tunnel over there. Yeah, and I was using 144 tire drops to stall them on this one and block off those tunnels with a couple of traps that'll deter them from wanting to go that way. Now, depending on where you placed your amplifier, hopefully you didn't place it down here in this pit. I mean, if you did, it's fine, but most people don't use this amplifier here. So when they spawn there, I was using spawn killing. I blocked off that ramp, so they mostly walk up here, and this is really good for recycling. And I have extra structures all over the place. I may need to go recap on that. Yeah, and like I said, this is a real good one for recycling because they walk and walk, and they do walk for at least a minute before they get recycled again. So this is a really lovely one if they get stuck up there. But most of the time it's the slingers that are getting stuck up there. The main bulk of the enemies are coming through this tunnel here, which is basically covered with a famous HC for Life wonderful trap tunnel. And I don't know if he still watches my videos, but that trap tunnel is a savior. And if you don't know the gas trap tunnel there, it's really good for any mission. Basically, it's like an all-around go-around trap tunnel, basically. And I covered this gets hit with a tornado wave. So when the tornado rips through this stuff, it destroys the structures to the point where sometimes just slap healing on these angled walls here, and a second prevention, add anti-airs all over this amplifier, because if the tornado busts through that stupid slinger wall, the slingers start slinging, and you don't want to get stuck with the slinger down. And then yeah, like some of this stuff, like I didn't is this part of this is from my old build. And if you have a smasher charging problem, a hint that you will need to know is use a tar trap. Tar traps stop smashers from charging anything. So if you have a tar trap next to the amplifier, it'll stop it temporarily from destroying the amplifier completely. And I did change the spawn point here. I was heavily spawn killing them with electric fields. I decided to attempt to stall them, and like I said, if you have a problem with them busting through any of your walls, add healing and increased wall health to any wall that you have a problem with, and it may deter them from wanting to even attempt to smack that. But like I said, Assassin Husk will track a player. If the player is in between you and the wall may get hit by the Assassin Husk, regardless of where you stand. Not where you stand. Where you stand is a problem, is what I'm basically trying to say. If you find yourself having a wall problem here and there. Just slap a wall spike on it with healing. And smashers, this does get hit with the smashers. So I was, the build at the bottom there is mainly there to nuke the smashers down. And I believe that's all on my Canny Valley rebuilds. And or one of the special bonuses is there's this one wave that gets, basically there's like four different spots that can get hit. Just build a box on back there. There's a 50% chance it spawns inside that box, and block off there, which will make them walk way around here. The crit on my wall darts usually kills anything that wants to detour around the far way, which is mostly slingers. So you will want to throw a couple anti-airs here and there, just in case you have a slinger problem. And that being said, I really hope y'all enjoyed my little recap on my Canny build. I've been here lately after I finished my Ventures grind, and I've been messing about, and yeah. I got off subject, but before you go, consider subscribing. Have a wonderful day.